He noticed it by accident, as most strange things are first noticed, not through analysis, but through a brief, unsettling intuition, the kind that passes like a chill before the body even has time to process what it means. He was brushing his teeth, the bathroom light low and flickering slightly, when he leaned forward to rinse, and caught something in the mirror, a slight hesitation, just a blink of time, where the motion he expected to see didn't quite match what he felt himself do. He stopped, leaned back, watched, lifted his arm deliberately. The reflection lifted too, but not in perfect unison. There was a lag. Not long. A second, maybe less. But long enough to be noticed. At first he dismissed it, blamed it on the old bulb, the foggy glass, the early hour. But when it happened again the next night, and again the morning after, he began to pay closer attention, watching not himself, but the space behind the glass, the version of him that should not need time to follow. He experimented. Small gestures. A nod. A twitch of the fingers. A blink. The mirror followed, almost always perfectly, but once in a while it didn't. Not late. Not broken. Just delayed. As if the reflection needed a moment to decide whether to follow at all. He found himself staring longer each day. Standing in front of the sink with the water running, unmoving, just watching, waiting, trying to catch that split second of betrayal again. And every so often, he did. Just the briefest pause, the smallest lag in movement, the tiniest fragment of time in which the mirror seemed to think for itself. What unsettled him most wasn't the delay itself, but the expression, or the lack of it. Because sometimes, during those hiccups in synchrony, his reflection wasn't quite the same. Not angry. Not smiling. Just slightly different. A head tilt that fell off. An eye that blinked too late. A mouth that didn't move at all. It didn't happen every day. That, somehow, made it worse. It felt deliberate. He began to avoid mirrors in passing, not out of fear, but out of the growing sense that whatever looked back at him was not merely an image, but something with attention. Something that watched, and waited, and sometimes, chose not to move at all. And though he never said it aloud, he began to wonder what would happen if one day, the reflection didn't move at all. He no longer approached the mirror casually, not because he feared it as one might fear a shadow or a sound in the dark, but because the mirror had ceased to be a surface, it had become a threshold, a thin, translucent membrane behind which something waited, not idly, not aimlessly, but with the quiet, meticulous patience of someone who listens more than they speak, someone who studies every glance, every pause, every minor gesture until the moment arrives when mimicry becomes memory and memory becomes will, and in those moments of stillness, when he stood before it and refused to move first, he could feel the tension rise in the room like pressure before a storm, not loud or sudden, but slow and deliberate, as if the air itself were bracing for the moment when the reflection would forget its role and act of its own accord. There were nights when he lingered in the bathroom longer than necessary, toothbrush forgotten in hand, eyes fixed not on his own face but on the subtle echoes of his posture, watching for the tremble, the blink, the almost imperceptible faltering of symmetry that confirmed what he now suspected, that whatever stood on the other side had begun to recognize him as more than an image, had begun to catalogue not just the motions of his body, but the rhythm of his hesitation, the structure of his indecision, the moments when his breath caught or his thoughts paused, and in those fractions of delay, it was learning not just how to follow, but how to wait. One evening, passing the hallway mirror with nothing but a cup of coffee and a lingering thought, he saw it, not a full movement, not a dramatic gesture, but a flicker, a twitch, a shift too early by a single blink of time, as if the reflection had expected his gaze and tried to meet it before he arrived, and though the moment passed like the brief shiver of a dream, it clung to his awareness, because it meant the illusion of synchronicity was no longer sustainable, and the figure behind the glass was no longer trying to match him, but to predict him. He began sleeping with a light on in every room that contained a reflective surface, not because he believed illumination could protect him, but because the dark made the mirrors feel deeper than they should, not hollow but vast, as if they stretched inward rather than reflected outward, and he feared that in darkness, the thing he saw each day would stop pretending altogether and look back not as an echo, but as an occupant. And then came the morning when the mirror didn't move at all, not late, not sluggish, but absolutely still, for 3 full seconds that pulsed with a silence so dense it felt like sound turned inward, and in that frozen moment, he saw not himself delayed, but a figure entirely separate, standing with a posture too precise, eyes too focused, expression too calm to be his own, and just as he opened his mouth to speak or breathe or flee, he wasn't sure which, the figure smiled, not in mockery or comfort, but in acknowledgement, a quiet, subtle narrowing of the lips that said more than words ever could, and then, without waiting for him to do anything at all, it raised its hand first, not in response, not in unison, but in permission, as if the time had finally come not to mirror, but to replace.